how did the FGC meetups first start? Like, what's the story there? Ham jams.
Before my time, FGC Meetups has been around for quite some time. It's been over, if I'm not mistaken, over 10 years.
12 years.
If I'm not mistaken, it was
Wow.
Street Fighter 4. It was the tail end. It was like Ultra Street Fighter 4. I was just talking to Noah, and he's one of the main TOs, was one of the main TOs of it then, and Callisto did broadcast for it. There's one other individual who actually initially asked the owner of Ignite Gaming Lounge, hey, can I just like bring people here for cheaper and run tournaments? And he was like, all right, cool. And I guess with time, they worked something out, because now, FGC Meetups is a brand, and it is a property of Ignite Gaming Lounge. And it has been going for many years under the same team of people that whole time. And it wasn't until Raid Gaming Lounge shut down, GameWorks became the home of Super Saturdays, that is when we were then asked to take over, because Noah was tired.
Yeah,
And
as we all get to one point. That's interesting. From Super Saturdays out of GameWorks, you all just kind of converged into the Ignite Lounge, right?
Yes, and initially it was in Elston, and that venue was fantastic because it was local to like inner Chicago. It was 5 minutes from this guy's house. Now it's like a 5-minute drive from my apartment currently. But with time, they built a second venue, and when they built that second one, initially we weren't there. We were still running it on Mondays, and one day they, pandemic hit, they shut that thing down, and they kept open the one in Skokie, which is like a suburb of Chicago. When we went there, it was originally on Thursdays, which we fought tooth and nail. Thursdays is not a good day. Yeah. Monday was already insane, but people were used to it. But Thursday was like, this has a bar inside of it.
Okay.
What are you doing? And a lot of time of just constant aggressively saying, like one day they were like, okay, so the front half, the not event center area of this is actually closed down. It's being rented out by somebody for like a party. So we're going to throw you in the back. And that was the events place where Roundhouse is run today. And people went to that one. And it was actually pretty occupied. FGC Meetups actually went through a pretty long span of time where Seth and I would show up. I would drive all the way from Joliet. It was an hour drive. And when I got there, it was 8 or 9 people and Seth and I. And then they put us in the event space, and people said, hey, if you do it here again, you could probably get more people. And eventually we convinced them.
Yeah. Okay, so how did
Fridays have it in the event space?
So how did it go from like 9 people showing up to what it is now?
Ham is right. Like, we went through a lot of different trials to ensure FGC Meetups like got to the point that it is now. Consistency was the number one thing, right? Like, we'll start there. Consistency. Like, we're constantly running it. After or rather before COVID, like we were Mondays and Thursdays, like Mondays in the Chicago, like the actual city location, and then Thursdays out in the burbs. So because we were kind of consistently doing that, like people were able to like have their option and then go. But it did really, really dip pre-COVID. And I think that was just because, the game selection was kind of not there yet. Like Street Fighter was kind of on its way out. Not necessarily on its way out.
Everything was like, meandering. Yeah. Everything was pretty much on its way out. If you were not a dedicated player, I think the only game that was sustaining us at that time where we could continue to do stuff was Tekken 7.
Yeah. And
even
like
then,
we capitalized off of like game releases and stuff. We were still on like a rotating thing. So like, oh, Grand Blue will pop up. Like, this is really right before COVID. Like, Grand Blue will be here, and then Sam Show will be here, and then like we kind of split that, and that wasn't good. And I think that was kind of what really hampered our numbers. Then COVID happened. Everything shut down. We switched to online, and I think that where we really, really got the boost was the demand for offline again. So once we reopened back up, we had like a dangerous amount of people in the building. We had like 300 people. Wow. Our first event back after COVID. We kept that regularly going because that was when we started being on Fridays. They gave us a Friday to do that in the event space. And then they wanted to bring us back out into like the regular space, and we were like, no, trust me, like just keep it here. And we did, and we just kept it in there every Friday. And there was a point where it started to dip again. Like we were carried by Guilty Gear Strive, and that was like the one thing that we did. But
I think the
everything
entire
else, like,
FGC
the other
was,
games,
yeah.
like it was, dude.
Yeah,
like post
we
COVID,
were-
right after COVID, that was all you had was Strive.
I would walk into the local every week because it was weekly at the time still, and I don't play Guilty Gear Strive. And I had tried it. I put in a college try. I think I have like 80 hours in it, like within the time that, you know, we got outside. And when we got there, it was like there were 7 people there that were like, I can't wait to play Street Fighter 5. And then there was like 100+ people like Guilty Gear Strive.
Wow.
And that was it. Every other game, it was like, you're here, but it's Guilty Gear.
Yeah. So I think that what got us to like grow was, number one, there was a point where we dipped down so bad that, and it wasn't like so bad, but it was like we were starting to get like 30, 40 people, which to them was like, no, like we can't justify having you in the event space like every Friday. So what we're going to do is we're going to split it to every other week. And that honestly really helped, because what would happen was that people, if they weren't going to come this week, they would just come next week. But because we like halved the amount of events to run, people will be like, well, I gotta go to this one now. So that helped boost the numbers, that helped build the numbers. And then I think like once we got streams, once we started to like add more games and continuously like consistently have them there, was like we started to build consistency. And then once Street Fighter 6 dropped, it was like, oh,
I mean,
you
ever like you I know we're all familiar with the concept of the turnkey business. Street Fighter 6 came out and it was a laundromat. It was immediate.
Wow.
Yeah. Like we were pulling, I think right before Street Fighter 6 came out, we had like probably regularly 70 or 80, which is still great.
Yeah, that's a gigantic number for locals. Yeah,
that's still good. And that was across like 4 or 5 games that we had at the time, right? We were running like Strive, KOF, Street Fighter 5, Tekken, and then I think like a rotating anime game or like rotating whatever game, right? And then like people would just come because like our Strive scene was like super active, and I think that was why we got as many numbers as we did. It would be like a 30 to 40 person Strive bracket, and then like the rest of it was the other games. But then Street Fighter happened, and then it was like the same number plus 200 Street Fighter people. So,
wow.
Yeah, and that really just never went away. I think once Street Fighter 6 happened, like that like explosiveness didn't go away, and then Tekken 8 dropped, and it was like we'll just let it happen at this point, you know.
Just kind of compounded from there, huh?
Yeah, we really took advantage.
It was some very aggressive marketing, but also in conjunction, if you run something, if you run every game as we do, it's pretty much like you can't mess this up.
Yeah.
Chicago has an incredibly strong Tekken community. I remember even before the pandemic and everything was going bad, even before that time, I would go to the Elston Ignite and it was like 60 people were playing Tekken.
Wow.
That was the game for a while.
Yeah.
And though Guilty Gear was strong, Guilty Gear represented probably about 17 to 20 people of the community. Tekken was keeping things afloat. But then you just triple banged it and went, okay, Tekken and Street Fighter and Guilty Gear Strive still hanging on like on average like 35 people. So it's
wow.
The games are the games that people like. I'm happy that the communities like their game.